epistemology. First, at some point A is sentience. That's the capacity to feel and perceive or experience subjectively. We can see that in the status quo, multiple things are sentience, including human beings, but also animals as well. We should focus especially on the animal part. Moving on. Subpoint B. The plan is going to be a step in the right direction. Oh, yeah, I'll take your point. Sorry. Oh, shoot. Wait. 6:45. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Can you repeat your, interpretation of multiple things have something?
So contention 1 is epistemology. The subpoint A is sentience. That's the capacity to feel and perceive or experience subjectively. And we're saying that our argument is that multiple things in the world experience sentience, including animals, which is like animals have the ability to feel. They have the ability to feel pain, feel sadness, and any type of things along those lines. The B. The plan is a step in the right direction. We can see that when we enact the plan, we change the epistemology of our current government right now, and we actually decrease the sort of ego-securitization that happens in the status quo, where we sort of create catastrophe in the environment. I'll take your points at the end if I have time. The plan is the right direction to change the epistemology because we're actually going to be valuing the sentience of animals and sort of other beings in the world. We can see that right now, the harms in the environment, we can see that there's multiple sorts of levels of pollution. We can see with the status quo, but also among other things, in the status quo, there's a 400 parts per million in the atmosphere, while 440 parts per million is going to be the tipping point. This is actually extremely harmful for animals in the status quo. I'll take your question at the end of this advantage. It is actually going to be extremely harmful for other sentient beings because they can actually feel the pain caused by this climate change and human exploitation in the world. The plan is an epistemological shift in the right direction, meaning that when we change our epistemology, we're going to be able to create better policies in the future when we actually value the environment in this context. Yeah.
Do you defend the theoretic implications of a governmental policy option?
We do. The plan is later. Next. The second advantage is precedent. First, the uniqueness. A, climate change is happening in the status quo. The Earth is currently at 400 parts per million carbon dioxide, pollutants in the atmosphere, and 440 parts per million is the brink. We can see that the Earth is currently close to reaching the 2% climate change sort of threshold that will tip us into a point of irreversibility. Subpoint B, the Trump administration's stand on climate change is bad. It encourages exploitation. Multiple warrants on this. We can see that oil has won during the past 2 years. Nebraska just recently approved the path for the controversial Keystone XL pipeline and among other oil regulations such as the oil and gas tax deductions. Subpoint C, the world view on the U.S. is bad right now. After the U.S. pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement, we can see that a lot of people in the world aren't cooperating with the U.S. anymore on climate change regulations, which is extremely critical when we get to the rest of the argument. We can also see that ASEAN was approved in Asia without approval of the U.S., meaning that U.S. presence in the world is low in the status quo. The links. The SCOTUS cases are a key to setting precedent. We can see that in many cases in the past, they have been referred to in the future to cite precedents for future policies, such as Brown versus the Board of Education or Plessy versus Ferguson. Back to the uniqueness, one more point. Subpoint D, there's core backlog in the status quo, like immigration policies are currently really back on the status quo. Okay, next on to the internal links. First one, we changed Trump's administration's stand on environmental policy when we affirmed the resolution the United States Supreme Court should rule in favor of Juliana and Juliana versus U.S. Because we can see that in the case, what's happening is that the youth of the United States are suing the United States federal government because of their affirmative action on policies that are detrimental to the environment, which harm their constitutional rights to life, liberty, and property, and failing to protect trust fund resources. We can see that this court case is going to be ruled on in November. This court case is going to be ruled on because it has been stalled and previously because the Court of Appeals granted Trump administration motion for temporary stops. Next. The next internal link here is that the government can no longer endorse ecologically exploitative actions, i.e. the previous citing in the uniqueness, like Keystone pipelines or other sort of affirmative action that destroys the environment. This encourages the passing of other more environmentally protective bills, such as Get the Lead Out of Schools Act or the Save Our Seas Act, which are currently in committee in Congress right now. These acts are going to be incredibly key because they're going to help this legislation be passed in order to secure our environment and be able to live in a better world in the future. The impacts. First, when we look towards better policies being passed in the future that are less ecologically destructive, this is going to be key to stopping climate change. Climate change, one, warming causes extinction. We can see that when the world becomes an uninhabitable environment due to temperature or other things, extinction will happen because the world is completely unlivable for humans. Next. Climate change unproportionally affects the minority population and those that are oppressed because we can see that those that don't have enough resources to access a movement or other other things to help them get out of the place they're living in. They're going to be externally oppressed. They're going to be magnitudely affected by climate change more than the richer populations in the world. This causes more poverty, which causes cyclical poverty in the world, which is incredibly dehumanizing. The third impact, climate change causes resource wars when there's a lack of resource, and because due to environmental change and like the temperature being able to evaporate all the water or sort of other resources that people need access to, this causes more proxy wars and conflict in the world, which leads to death, and they escalate nuclear, which causes extinction. The United States is going to be extremely key here because we can see that when the United States technological arms is so superior in the status quo right now, any type of conflict risks nuclear war and extinction. There's been wars in the past, like Egypt has in the past in 2011 went to a water war because they lacked the shortage of water. The second impact is multilateralism. When the U.S. passes this legislation, it changes their precedent and mindset with the government, which means that we allow the United States to work better with other countries on resolving climate change, which is going to be key to solving the first impact mentioned. Sorry, I already took 2 points. Sorry, okay, I'll take your point.
Yeah. Do you defend a narrow or wide ruling?
We defend a. I don't think that applies to the app here. We just defend the resolution. Anyway, third is government legitimacy. We can see that this is key to protecting the constitutional rights of the youth, which means that government legitimacy is going to go up, and this is key to stopping violent conflicts such as riots or any type of conflict in the status quo. Next, we can see that core backlog. This is going to solve core backlog because we don't want this thing to be locked up in the Supreme Court, which solves a lot of the immigrant cases. Which means that this is important because core backlog causes more crimes, death, and decentralization when these immigration cases aren't able to pass, and other sorts of justice things won't be legislated. That's the plan. The United States federal government, the United States Supreme Court should rule in favor of Juliana and Juliana versus U.S. the solvency. We can see that Supreme Court's ruling in the past have caused precedent shifts and sort of like epistemic shifts in the idea of our nation. For example, the Brown versus Board of Education, Plessy versus Ferguson declared that separate is actually not going to be equal, which is an epistemic shift from like the more racist past that we have moving into the more progressive future. This means that we have solvency to all our impacts.
So the order is going to be 3 off on case. Okay. Is everyone ready? Time starts now. A's interpretation, the affirmation must specify a narrow or broad ruling of Julius versus the United States in the PMC. The affirmation must specify a narrow or broad ruling of Juliana versus the United States in the PMC to stand. The violation that they don't, we specifically ask the standards. Yeah. Sure, Shannon, can you write the text? Standard. The first is going to be that of real education. Little a is narrow decisions that are often viewed as less legitimate. According to Pew Research, over 47% of citizens said that no justice was achieved in the cake shop ruling, indicating that we lose access to terms about legitimacy when you don't specify whether or not it's narrow or broad. If this is articulated abuse, the second is going to be ubiquitous ground because we don't actually have ground to make terms about whether or not it's a narrow or broad ruling, meaning we lose access to a lot of text disadvantage, we lose access to a lot of different arguments we can make, we lose access to a counterclaim that says a different type of ruling, indicate this is once again articulated abuse. The subpoint A is that without ground we don't have access to classes internally to having actual educational discussion with around. The third argument is depth of education. Having one specific type of ruling means we're able to focus on depth of education. Breadth is non-unique in parliamentary debate because we already get 5 preliminary targets. This is like our 7th one or something, which means that breadth is non-unique. The fourth argument is going to be fourth standards that are moving target without specifying. You're able to specify again in the MG, which means you're able to move all of the LC officers, which is determinedly not fair on the voter level. The first word is going to be that of fairness, very important because without fairness, debate would collapse. The second is going to be that of education. Without education, debate wouldn't get any administrative funding. The third, reason this is all prior issue, you have to know the rules before you can play the game. The fourth is going to be competing interpretation over reasonability because reasonability arbitrary and leads to judgment. The fifth is no RVS because the RVS didn't incentivize teams running a theory against legitimate abuse. The sixth is draw the debater because it sets competing norms and prevents abuse in the future. On the second shell. A's interpretation, the affirmation may not defend mindset field in the PMC. Affirmation may not defend mindset field in the PMC. The violation specifically, they garner offense and solvency and impacts from the fact that they're able to have an epistemological shift in the entirety of the United States, not just the people within this room, specifically about the first standard is going to be that of extra topicality. They're able to have access to impacts of literally the brains of 300 million people in the United States, which means the negation is never able to win because the affirmation is able to use this field to get guaranteed impacts. The second is going to be that of real world education. You're not able to fiat the mindset of people in the real world, indicating that you can't actually have any portable skills from the type of education they're engaging with in the round. The third standard is going to be that of springboard, because you're able to use the plan as like a springboard for epistemological change. This justifies really bad education because you're able to not talk about you're able to like spend all this time talking about philosophical education that's not usable outside of a debate round, which means it's bad for education. Fourth, yeah. Okay, so cross-by the voters on the first shot. On the disadvantage about the economy. On the uniqueness level. The first argument that U.S. businesses in the energy sector are doing with little a, small business optimism index for new energy tech startups have jumped to 108.8, which is an all-time high. The B argument is that investor confidence in the energy sector is up by 138 points to the highest since September 2000. The C argument is that growth in traditional energy sector, which is like fossil fuels, etc., actually made up 7% of jobs created in the United States last year. The D argument is that according to the Conference Board, which tracks and publishes major economic indicators, it says that the energy sector is the one reason that's basically pushing growth in spite of slow wage growth. The second argument is that the economy is, however, fragile. The little a is that the Chicago Board of Options Exchange volatility index found that energy sector is the locus point for economic insecurity on the links. The first link is that the plan is super unexpected. Little a is that Trump literally ran a platform on more jobs in the traditional energy sector like coal and gas. The B argument is that Trump literally had this like thing where you like cut a symbolic red tape to show a decrease in business regulation. The C argument is that businesses can react to unexpected political actions by freezing expansion. The word for this is that the U.S. passed a capital controls sort of regulation in which caused the real estate market to slow, and construction companies actually refused to take new contracts because they were afraid of government regulation. The second link is going to be the plan passes cautious regulation, which caused monetary losses. The little a is that the South Carolina Electric and Gas and related utilities literally had to cut services to comply to past regulations. But the B argument is that this causes a hiring freeze because it's cheaper to retain old workers than to hire new ones because you have to pay new workers more money, which leads to more unemployment. A third link is going to be that the plan passing constant investor flight. Little a is that the energy sector is specifically key because there's an overlap of foreign direct investment from other people investing within the United States, which means investors will have a strong incentive and a network to go somewhere else. But the B points that this is internal into business collapse because the only reason business can get capital in the first place is from investors, specifically small businesses, because small businesses need capital to actually start in the first place, and those are key to 3 million new jobs every year, which is a pretty big impact. So on the impacts. The one impact is going to be that of economic collapse. The subpoint A is that the energy sector failure will cause a spillover to the United States economy because there's a lot of overlap between like technology is dependent on the energy market for an actual market to sell the technology on. The utilities and power grid are all dependent on the fossil fuels and like the energy that is used in the power grid, which means that there's a high probability not only a grid collapse but the entire U.S. economy collapsing because again you can cross by my analysis that the energy sector is the only thing propping up the economy right now, which means economic collapse is extremely probable. That the B argument is U.S. economic collapse spillover to world economy because of 65% of the world liquidity is in the U.S. dollar, but the C argument is that a worldwide economic collapse leads to massive levels of poverty. Poverty is a huge dehumanizing and structural impact. 1 year in poverty takes away 7% of 7 years of a person's life. 70% of people born in poverty stay in poverty, and it's linked to high rates of heart disease and early death. The D argument is that economic collapse leads to environmental degradation. The word for this is Brazil. When people are literally starving, they don't care about whether or not they're illegally cutting down trees in order to feed their families, and indicating that economic collapse and poverty is always going to come first. The E argument is that economic collapse leads to war. The word for this in Germany after the Treaty of Versailles meant that all the people were like economic collapse and had no jobs. The country went to war to distract the civilians, indicating that war is extremely probable, especially between the U.S. and China, which is like a spark point because there's already tension within the status quo, which leads to a lot of lives lost, a lot of dehumanization because people will literally have their houses burned down, they'll be killed. On to case. On the contention one about epistemology, epistemology is bad for a couple reasons. A is epistemology isolationism and irresolvability because people have fundamentally different ideas about how they receive knowledge and how they attain knowledge, and it means you're never going to be able to resolve any impacts about epistemology. The B argument is epistemology is bad because it sees the political, because you're just talking about how much knowledge production that individuals have. That means you see an agency to the state who is free to do anything it wants when you don't actually have political engagement. But the C argument is that policy is key to epistemology. Simply passing a plan doesn't necessarily mean you are able to resolve the issues of epistemology, because putting epistemology apart and talking about epistemology is the reason why your plan uniquely fails, because it doesn't engage within the state policy making uniquely. And the D is that it's able to avoid responsibility. You can pass the plan within the last 20 seconds of your affirmative and never talk about the material implications and only talk about how you change epistemology, meaning you're never able to actually solve material impacts. On the B point about how the plan is a step in the right direction, the first argument here is that the plan is not a step in the right direction because literally one court case is not able to check back for the entirety of the Trump administration platform, which means it is only going to be masking at best. And the two argument is all your words about eco-securitization like literally don't make sense. You don't provide any analysis for how you eco-securitizing with just one court case, right? On the harms, actually, I'm going to get to harms on your global warming stuff. Let's move on to the contention 2 about precedent. First, we talk about how climate change is happening in the status quo. Extend that climate change is happening in the status quo. We're already past the brink of no return, meaning the only impact you can evaluate in the round is going to be that of economic collapse. On your second uniqueness point about how the worldview is bad, the first is that this is terminally low because we have Trump in office. The second response is that ASEAN is not a word for because it's literally just for Asian countries. But the third argument is going to be a turn. You're going to decrease our worldview because we're just going to be taking a symbolic work instead of doing actual material change. The third argument about court backlog, you have literally no solvency for court backlog because you don't solve for immigration, you don't solve for anything. There's only a risk that you actually increase court backlog because winners lose. Right? The Democrats are going to pass this, they're going to lose political capital doing this, which means all of the pro-immigration policies are going to go away, which worsens the court backlog. On the link argument, the first link you make is about precedent And the first argument is no spiller because other nations already care about the environment. You can look towards France, you can look towards Germany, you can look towards the Paris Climate Accord meeting. No possibility you're able to resolve the second response. Your second link you make about is like the court leads to constitutional rights. The first argument is that there's literally no impact to constitutional rights, but the second argument is that human conceptions of constitutional rights are the ones that are used to oppress animals in the first place. You're probably performantly contradicting with your epistemological framework. That's probably worse because a relink is worse than a link. Murder is worse than manslaughter because you already knew your epistemology was bad. On the third argument you talk about as Trump is going to destroy the environment. Cross my man. This is about how like winners are able to lose, so Democrats will have no political capital. On the impacts about global warming. First argument is that global warming is inevitable. The first argument is that UN 2030 reports that we're literally headed to extinction. We can't do anything to solve it. The second response is that recently they decreased the threshold to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which means we already are not meeting the temperature threshold. The third argument is that warming of the oceans is unstoppable. We're already past the brink of 3.2 parts per thousand. And the next argument is that global warming is good. The first argument is that global food production and IPCC studies found that atmospheric CO2 levels increase biomass security by 97.9%, grain by 150%. And the two arguments CO2 feedback studies of boreal forests in Finland found that additional carbon dioxide actually increased biodiversity, which is an indication that global warming is actually probably going to be good. Finally, on their last argument has a plan. Positive ruling and shift in epistemology. The word here is that school segregation is actually worse after Brown versus Board, meaning they have terminal no solvency when they use the Supreme Court. Sorry, I just did it. My water. Order.
Just a second, sorry. I like to follow the same order you did, which was like first T, second T, then your econ is that, and then case on the question. Case on top of what?
Sorry, what?
Alright, I'll say that all over again.
Sorry. T-shells, case on top, and then the set.
Case in the order you read it, right?
Okay. Start time, 3, 2, 1, go.
The counter-interpretation is that the Aff only needs to defend the resolution. Predictability. When the Aff is defending the resolution, they completely need predictability because we are allowing the Neg to debate against anything against the resolution. The resolution only explicitly says that the Supreme Court should rule in favor of Juliana versus the U.S. So when the affirmation defends us, they are actually like allowing predictability, whereas if we narrow ourselves to something smaller or something slower, we actually avert most of the disadvantages. When we allow for like everything, they can make all the arguments they want to, and it's all encompassed within our thing.
There's no grounds because actually they get more ground.
There's no ground because actually they get more ground because they can argue against everything instead of just like less things. So we're actually like rather than skewing them out of the round, we're giving them more, ground. Next, reciprocity. You simply need to negate the resolution. We simply need to affirm the resolution. If you assign any additional burdens to the affirmation, there's no reciprocity in debate, which is unfair. So you essentially now you on their standards they. So, because of this, you don't follow their argument about all of this, and it's not a drop to debate issue.
Like the reasonability.
Prefer competing interpretations over reasonability because reasonability invites judge intervention.
No, reasonability over competing.
In fact, prioritize reasonability over competing interpretations because reasonability checks back against abusive T that's run. Like when you see that they run 2 T shells, it's probably bad for debate because they're decreasing education by running in so much theory that the affirmation does not have enough time to debate against everything. On the next theory, they say that the affirmation is not defending fiat, but on the next theory, they say that we can't defend mindset, but the Aff can defend both material and epistemological impacts that are achieved through the affirmations plan. They say that we are extra-topical, but we are not. Okay. They say that we are extra-topical, but we are not extra-topical. Their epistemology is creating theirs. They say that the springboard in this is not usable. Yes, real-world policy, we do better. We analyze both epistemological and material consequences, which is better for education as we open the debate space up to more impacts. Additionally, we're not fiating mindsets, but rather we're fiating the plan, which then causes the mindset to change, which is the link. That's not what we're fiating. Okay. Now, case in order. First on epistemology. You will see that they completely concede the uniqueness inside of epistemology. They concede that currently epistemology is completely flawed, and that if we continue this epistemology, then it will inevitably lead to global warming, which will then lead to disaster and outbreak, and we will essentially see like a global extinction. What you'll see here is that if you extend this uniqueness, you essentially have what you call a try or die scenario. If you do not implement any policy and you do what the neg is doing, which is absolutely nothing, then you die because of global warming. But if you do the affirmations, at least you're doing something, so it's a try scenario. Next, they talk about how the energy sector is going up in investment, but this is independent of our like entire epistemological point, because still you can still alter the epistemology, so there's even more investment in the energy sector. They talk about how there's like they talk about the economy being weak, and essentially they talk about how jobs will go down and such. But when there's actually more jobs created per like job inside of the like investment of social like inside of green power, you'll see that you prefer the affirmation here, and this is actually a case term, a link term, because when you create more jobs, when you have like green energy and green technology, you'll see that it's actually better because you're decreasing fossil fuel and helping the economy. Alright, next, unprecedented. They say that Trump has like fossil fuel agendas, but we'll see that Trump will no longer be able to pass any policy inside of his presidency that is going to cause like extreme harm through fossil fuels. They completely concede the links about Nebraska and how there's currently a lot of policy being pushed through. Next, they say that they talk about how the energy sector is like key and stuff, but we'll see that the energy sector is still remaining, and when we allow for green technology to like prosper, we see an increase in our economy because there are more jobs created with the green like energy sector than with the fossil fuel sector. They talk about these internal links to like business collapse, and they bring up all these improbable links. Well, Judge, you should weigh probability over like magnitude, because what you see is the affirmation like shows you clear links to the impacts, whereas they give you like these like bizarre out of like place links that lead to things. So like business collapse wouldn't happen because when the U.S. is intervening in like the entire energy industry, what we'll see is that people will actually move towards like green energy, which is like link term, because what we see is that it becomes better for people. So talk about how the spillover, but since the economy won't collapse, there'll be no spillover. They talk about diversionary war, but again, this won't happen because their link doesn't stand on their.
2008 disproves spillover.
And 2008 disproves spillover. Okay. That's pretty much their next onto epistemology. They say that it causes isolationism. They say that we can't resolve they make all these arguments, but what they fundamentally concede is in our epistemology, we talk about sentience, we talk about how animals are actually sentient beings, and they completely concede this. So what you'll see is you're actually going to be weighing animal impacts on the same magnitude as human impacts. So what you see is when the negation completely concedes that you're causing global warming, which will inevitably kill all the animals, what you're seeing is that you actually have a complete impact with extinction. On top of that, you have the animal impacts.
Yeah, given that every time you swallow, you kill tons of bacteria, when you walk to the ground, you step on tons of ants, how are we able to actually evaluate animal impacts on the same level as human impacts?
Animal impacts can be evaluated in the same level as human impacts, because when you're swallowing bacteria, that's consumed for food purposes and it's necessary. But when you're inhumanely treating animals through global warming and stuff, that's bad. Additionally, I don't step on ants. That's just mean. I don't know why you do that. Anyways. So they talk about overseeing the political, but this is completely, again, it's like a probability impact. Additionally, we see that this is not extremely true, because they said that this is an extremely democratic resolution, but it's not. The Democrats wouldn't be swaying their vote for this. This is the Supreme Court, so it has nothing to do with Congress. The Democrats aren't actually using any of the political things. It's simply the Supreme Court of the United States. So, and in fact, the Republicans would have to support this because we have a Republican majority Supreme Court of the United States. So this is inherently untrue. They talk about how we're masking, but this is not true, and they don't respond to the securitization at all. They say, how are you securitizing? But we're
They say material implication, but epistemology comes first before material implication.
They say material implication, but epistemology comes before material implication. So you can weigh our epistemology argument before all the other arguments. Alright, so since they concede the epistemology, this is an easy way to the ballot. Next. Yeah.
They say court case can't check back, but it has in the past.
And they say that court cases can't check back, but they have, and they have in the past. It makes some blippy response to the end of the speech. Don't flow this because it's off time. Additionally, so you can extend the uniqueness my partner brings up about Brown versus the Board of Education, and how people still quote equal is never truly equal, separate but equal is never truly equal. So extend this as an epistemological argument and flow this for the affirmation and book them down. Next on the point of precedent, they bring up this point about climate change is already happening, but you can still prevent climate change. They bring up a lot of statistics and reasoning, but if climate change is inevitable, then there's no point in policy action in the first place, so there's no point in happening this debate. But that's simply untrue, because you can actually stop this, and this is simply untrue statistics.
They say climate change is good, but clearly climate change is
They say climate change is good, but it's clearly bad. They say that there's like it's non-unique because climate change is already happening, but we defer climate change. And additionally, when you increase investment in the green technology sector, as we do, you can potentially solve for some of the issues that like we can't solve for currently. So this is a further lane. Next, they talk about how we decrease the worldview, but increasing like investment in the green tech and decreasing our like involvement in fossil fuel increases the worldview because we're viewed as less of a hegemon that abuses like the others, but and you know causes a lot of like global warming. Next, they talk about how there's backlog when the Democrats lose, but again, this is simply untrue because the Dems don't lose political like capital or seat the political because this is like a Supreme Court action under fiat. Next, they talk about how like there's like spillover, but again, spillover is like a low probability of impact. If they don't have their first impact, they don't have spillover. They talk about global warming is inevitable. This is simply untrue. Caused by other.
Okay, the order is going to be the second theory shell, and then ace. Is everyone ready? First, on the counterinterpretation, there are a couple of reasons for why their counterinterpretation is really bad. First of all, they literally said material and epistemological implications mean they literally have double ground. That they literally have like both the pre-fiat and the post-fiat implications mean that they can basically second of all makes them moving target means the app is technically conditional in their word, which means they can that means they can collapse to anything that is methodological versus like epistemological versus material, which probably means this is increased reason for why or increases our magnitude for why they have extra topical impact, which means our first standard they never respond to this. But the third reason for why their counterinterpretation is bad because they cannot fiat mindset technically, and also they can see that fiating mindset is extremely bad because it literally like forces everybody to think in the same exact way, and this is not real world whatsoever, which means you can extend our second standard by this not real world key to portable skills. We argue that portable skills is the most profitable impact within this rate because even if we do not become policymakers in the future, this is really key to becoming more educated voters, which probably means that in a world in which you are not creating like more education for just us in this debate space is probably really bad with them right now. But third of all, they don't concede our standard about springboard and how it is bad for education. The fact that you are able to springboard your advocacy over here means it's super unintelligible for people who are even listening to this round, which means that there's very low probability of solvency for your entire advocacy, which means that all of these independent standards can act independently as disadvantages to their entirety of their app case, which probably is the reason for why they have absolutely no solvency. But on the voter level, they literally concede a whole bunch of stuff, and I don't have it. Okay, on the voter level, you're going to be looking towards how education is going to be outweighing fairness to the point, fairness is going to be outweighing education, or is the internal link to education to get the point where we don't have access to your arguments, we don't have accessibility to whether or not you are going to be defending mindset. That probably means that we're not able to justify our position against you. Yeah.
Also, when they defend both material and epistemology, this bites our indict of breadth of education being bad.
Oh yeah, and then when they defend both methodology, when they defend both material mindsets and the epistemological, this literally bites into our wait, what?
Because we say that breadth is bad because generating mediocre offerings on everything and also.
Oh yeah, this bites into our theory about how breadth is extremely bad because we literally are proliferating a whole bunch of offers that is literally going to be non-unique at the end of the day. Again, we tell you that this is non-unique because every single debate where we have a different resolution, which probably means you're always going to be prioritizing depth over breadth because we're increasing the amount of education in this round, which means that you cannot which means that they don't meet the interpretation. You can extend our interpretation across the flow at the point where they also concede on the voter level that counter interpretations are always going to be better than reasonability. They don't give you a bright line for reasonability, even if they tell you to go for reasonability, which is probably for a reason for why you're always going to be looking towards counter interpretations are better because they decrease the amount of judge intervention. Also, counter interpretations are uniquely better because they allow for teams to check back against theory. So even if you're looking towards reasonability, that's still increasing your subjectivity within the round, which means that even if they can mindset your fiat, that probably is really bad in the world, and in a world in which you should be making your own independent decisions, which is another indict of their entire affirmative. Anything else?
Explain why this comes before the.
Oh, this comes.
framing.
What?
Explain why this comes before epistemology.
Oh, this comes before epistemology because we can't even ever interrogate our own epistemology if we don't have an understanding of fairness of what we should have as an epistemological mindset within the first place, which means this is always going to be coming before the framing of the Aff. Let's go to the framing of the Aff now. First of all, they try to tell you that the epistemologies are going to become before the plantex, but at the point where they receive all the 4 independent reasons for why epistemologies are bad in the first place, that means you can never give them access to this type of internal link analysis, which means that at the point where it's irresolvable, this sees the political policies are literally key to epistemology, which means that your plan needs to pass first in order to which means that epistemologies can basically change, are not predicated off of a plan passing, which probably means that you are never able to solve, but also they avoid responsibility of material impacts of the plan. This basically means that at the point where they don't defend the actual material implementation, this justifies a long-term amount of ceding the political in which we never actually engage with the state in order to solve problems, which serves as a terminal no solvency deficit for the entirety of their case. Also, they say that you are key to this is really key to understanding sentient being for response. So here, first of all, there's no warrants for why animals have different ontologies than us, at the point where you are literally assuming the fact that we are sentient beings and have feelings other than that are unique and quantifiable in terms of human impacts. That probably means that you are asserting your own ideas of what human rights should be on these animals, which is extremely bad for their inherent quality. But second of all, this is not verifiable because of the fact that animals this is not verifiable. You can't just ask a dog how they feel, obviously, or even the bacterial organisms in your mouth how they feel, which probably means you're never able to solve for this. But third of all, there's no bright line for what is a sentient being anyways, because the fact that there's so much bacteria that's literally living on my arm right now, which means that fourth of all, there's a term you literally assume the fact that they're separate ontological beings, which means we never have the same epistemology as these sentient beings anyway, which means you are never able to solve. But they try to say this tie back for the affirmative. If everyone dies, it's literally going to be inevitable, which means that you cannot evaluate quality. You have to evaluate quality of life first, quality of life first, and what you can do within your lifespan before you look towards the triad of the affirmative. Because if they concede all of our analysis about how climate change is literally inevitable, which means it's not a question of if we're going to die. We are going to die. It's only a question of how we evaluate ourselves within life itself, which means that you're always going to be looking towards this framing first. I'll take one question to the end. The second contention was about precedent. They concede the fact at the bottom of the sheet all the reasons why climate change is literally inevitable. That doesn't matter whether or not it doesn't matter whether or not things are good or bad in that instance, which means that on a framing level, you're always going to be looking towards the negation first. First of all, let's go into line by line. They literally try to talk about Nebraska and Plessy versus Ferguson. First of all, there's no contextualized reason for why that means you vote for the affirmative in this specific instance. They give you no reason for why in this passing their plan will result in better material implications within the real world, which means you give very low credibility on this argument. But second of all, you can see that Plessy versus Ferguson was literally worse for segregated schools. That basically meant that Brown versus Ford literally made it really worse for schools because this literally increased the amount of segregation because of the fact that literally in Arkansas people literally had to have police officers with them to go to school, which probably means that you're masking the issue by just passing their plan. But also they try to say the Democrats are literally not going to be doing anything. There are a couple of reasons for why Democrats losing political capital is key. Democrats in the House will basically lose their momentum for passing bills because the federal government will say that we're bound by the Constitution already. We already passed this. SCOTUS ruling means that we don't have to listen to you anymore. That means that winners lose additional awards for how Trump's decision to basically reunite families together at the border actually decreased incentives for Democrats to pass comprehensive immigration reform because Trump basically was able to posture that he had solved all these problems already, which probably means that you are masking the problem. They took that there's no check back. First of all, the courts are literally not always right. We literally told you that Brown versus Board did not legitimize the fact or did not resolve issues of discrimination, which probably means that courts are, even if they are flawed, they are never able to make the correct decisions, which means that in long term you end at the point where you even see the political, this magnifies the link of how you are never able to solve it. Also on the lower the impact level, they literally concede every single word about how the global warming is inevitable. We should even extend all of this. This probably means that the point where climate change is inevitable, it's not a question of whether or not the app is good or bad. It's a question of what we can do within our actual lives. Let's couple of reasons for why climate change being good means that you vote for the negation. First of all, you can see that climate change is going to be the internal link to is ever going to be resolving things that are proximal within our own lives, right? Because we understand that we are going to die no matter what. That means that it's only a question of whether or not we can assert ourselves within this debate space. But second of all, you can see that this is really good in terms of the thinking about things in a very what else? What are the reasons?
I gave you the sheet for what you
another couple of reasons. You can see that biodiversity, the 10-year study found that CO2 basic emissions were increasing biodiversity by 50%, which probably means that we're able to, which means that the SAS was able to solve, but also, SO2 is also really good, diffuses solar radiation, a warrant for 1992, the Pinto eruption basically caused a photosystem that increased by 23% in terms of forests, which probably means that deforestation is not an issue over here on their plan text. There's literally no reason for why their plan text is able to solve cross by all my reasons for why, even if you do this court case, the court case is probably going to be bad extent, and that's what you vote next.
epistemology than the precedent/global warming debate. Okay, is everyone ready? The overview to today is that you can see that theories and a priori issue comes before your epistemological values, which means you have to pull the trigger on the theory shell. On the theory shell, extend all my partners' analysis of why their counterinterpretation literally is more abusive than our original interpretations. There's obviously a reason to drop them. But next, let's go to the voter level and let's go to the standards and talk about the implications of the standards. On the first standard about extra topicality, a couple implications here. The little A implication here is that they're able to have extra impacts within this round. Extra impacts always mean they're able to win, which means they're always behind on the impact level, which means a neg is never going to be winning any sort of rounds. Terminal no fairness. But the second standard about real political skills, the first implication of this is that we're never going to be good policymakers, good activists once we leave the round, and that is always going to be outweighed because what we do outside the round is definitely longer than the 40 minutes we're within this round. But the second argument for why political skills is going to converse that we're never going to be able to solve for epistemology or be good policymakers and activists in accordance to your pro-animal stance if we don't even have access, we don't even have the skills to have that stance in the first place, meaning that this implication always comes first. On the third standard about Springboard being bad for education, the biggest implication here is that you're simply justifying bad debate norms and proliferating bad community norms within the debate community by having this sort of abuse happening right now, which is why you have to vote for the voters. On the voters, the first thing you're going to be voting on is why fairness comes before all impacts of the round. The first argument we make is that fairness is going to be skewing evaluation of the round because if you don't even have access to your arguments in the first place, we're not able to truth test your affirmative, we're not able to actually interrogate the implications of your epistemology in the first place, meaning you have to look at fairness as a prerequisite. But the second reason why fairness comes first is because your movement is going to lose legitimacy if you got it by cheating in the first place. But the third reason why fairness comes first.
That's a new point that you lose legitimacy.
I'm just weighing the impacts of the shell versus the impacts of epistemology. I think as the OOR I have the ability to do this, and I think I also have the ability to preempt the impacts of epistemology that you're probably going to go for in the PMR. Okay, even if you don't buy that, fairness is a prerequisite to evaluating the epistemology at all. Next,
Proximal fairness.
Next, fairness is a proximal impact. You have to prioritize proximal impacts because they're the most probable, because they're literally happening right now in this debate space, which is an indication that you always have to vote for these first. On the drop the team analysis, this goes completely conceded. You have to drop the team because it sets debate norms, and because drop the, that's literally why. We have the impact of the entire debate community because people continue running abusive arguments. If you don't drop them on this theory shell, means we have a terminal impact of the entire debate community collapsing, which is probably really important because without the debate community, you can't even read your epistemology shell in the first place, meaning the debate community being alive is a prerequisite to any of your epistemological claims. Next, third, fourth, I don't even remember. No golden turns in the PMR. The first argument is that you already answered the shell in the end. You can't make any new arguments in the PMR. The second argument is that we can't respond after the block anyway, which means it's terminally non-fair to make new arguments in the PMR. The third response is that the negation is always at a disadvantage because you know the M collapse but we don't know until the PMR, meaning you have to not let them make any new arguments to our shell because they simply conceded way too much in the end. You have to pull the trigger right here. But if you don't buy that, we're winning on epistemology because they concede straight up 4 reasons why debating epistemology within debate is bad. This is a terminal reason for why your mindset within this round is going to be polluting the mindset of everyone within this room, which is probably an indication why you have to pull the trigger on their own framework. But specifically, they try to solve for all these anthropocentrist kind of impacts, but they fundamentally concede the fact that if global warming is inevitable, we're all going to die, animals and humans alike. So it's just a question of whether or not your plan is a good idea. And we point out that your plan is a bad idea because at worst it's only going to be masking the epistemology that the state uses to covertly and influence the people within this round, within the people who are going to be affected by the SCOTUS case in the first place, which is probably going to be a term that you straight up conceded. The second reason you don't solve for anthropocentrism or your epistemological impacts is the relink I made on the first second thing about precedent, where I talk about how a relink is worse than link because you're literally implicating yourself in the very mindset that you indict, which is arguably worse.
Relink wasn't extended to your first speech, the second speech. It's a sharp extension.
The murder manslaughter thing was not extended in the twins.
Well, I still read in reasons for why you were you're asserting over what the epistemology of what animals should be, which probably means that you relink into your epistemological claims in the first place. That's analysis that I do.
Ultimately, that doesn't even matter because they don't impact this out. On to the second contention about precedent. The biggest thing they have conceded on this page is that they're going to be basically causing the entirety of the Democratic Party to backslide because they fundamentally concede the part that it will take a massive amount of political capital to push this through the courts to actually get companies to comply, which is an indication that in the future you'll never be seeing any material changes in immigration, never see any material changes in climate change because it is the structural government policies that matter, not the individual mindsets of the individuals, right? Because the structural policies influence how companies interact, how business interact, how people interact, which means we are winning on the issue of magnitude. Finally, the next reason they're not winning is because of the fact that Supreme Court cases are fundamentally flawed and do not change. You can look towards the Brown versus Board impact where segregation was literally worse afterwards. And fourth of all, they're losing on this because they completely concede the fact that global warming is inevitable. We're literally all going to die. It's just a question of the theory shell first and a question of their masking their relinks to their own epistemology that is going to be losing them around here. And finally, global warming is good anyway, so if all else goes to bad, Okay.
Order is going to be the theory shell, epistemology, precedent. A brief overview. If the affirmative wins and they meet a theory shell, that means that you can vote affirmative immediately because they completely concede the extension that my partner made in his 2AC where he's talking about how even though global warming is happening right now, there are technologies that we can look to that can solve global warming, which completely destroys their inevitability argument and their global warming good argument. Now, on to the theory shells. First, extend the counter-interpretation that Aff can defend both material and epistemic impacts. Extend the analysis of my partner where he talks about how real-world policy, there is both epistemology but also a materialistic consequences involved, meaning that you can't just limit out the debate to only materialistic impacts. And not only that, like we don't skew you on the round because you still run a disadvantage on us. There's no round skew here.
The argument that just because we run a disside means there's no round skew in this round is completely new.
It's analysis on the ground skew argument that my partner extended in the MO.
That ground skew argument was still made on a different sheet.
Right,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
Alright. They say we can't fiat the mindset, but we don't fiat the mindset, we fiat the plan, which changes the mindset in epistemology. Go to their argument where they talk about how Brown versus Board of Education is bad. Brown versus Board of Education, first of all, there's like a long-term impact here. This was new in the blog, so I can respond to this now. It's a long-term shift. We can see that right now we have more progressive policy than we did in the past, meaning that we get access to these epistemic impacts. Now, they also don't cite the Plessy versus Ferguson that goes completely conceded, which means that you can see that the plan solves and we gain access to the epistemological impact. Next. They say that standards are disadvantaged in the Aff case, however, extend our counter standards of how we actually give them more ground to work with when where our counter is just more inclusive, the debaters and all of this are meaning we actually better link to fairness in education because we allow them to make more arguments since we don't.
The argument that you give us more ground to debate on was actually made on the other theory shell about how you're not allowed to defend both narrow and wide rulings. So the cross-application to this theory shell is a new cross-application, should not be made in the PMR.
Pretty sure the analysis was made on both sheets. Okay. 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 Extend the impacts when we talk about how you should prefer reasonability because competing interpretation is completely like arbitrary and they only say that it allows them to check back against theory, but theory we should be focusing on substantive or sort of critical or substantive or any type of consequence of the plan in the first place, meaning that there is if there's any type of abuse, if there's any type of abuse, it's going to be under their theory shell. Okay.
One word of stop time. The argument that the theory shell is abusive because we somehow take away from substantive debate is definitely a new argument.
The argument that allows teams to check back against theory was new in the block.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. On the epistemology argument, they say epistemology is bad, and that's the only thing that they're relying on to win on this advantage. However, first of all, extend the analysis my partner makes about how that epistemology is actually good. Extend the conceded argument that epistemology shapes policymaking in the first place, which means that all of their epistemology bad arguments don't stand. We talk about how there is no seat in the political because this is a Supreme Court case, not in the Congress, meaning that they don't have access to any of their.
The argument that you're not seeing the political because this is a court case is a new argument.
That was definitely made in the 2NC. But anyway, panel.
Wait, sorry, your point is that their argument is new to the block?
No,
my
argument
partner
is-
extended it
Oh,
in the 2NC.
Under consideration.
Okay. They say that extend the arguments when we talk about how probability, how about this plan will actually change epistemology. We cite you specific historical warrants about how these have how the previous court cases have changed long-term epistemology, such as Plessy versus Ferguson or Brown versus Board of Education. When they talk about short-term policies, you're going to be weighing long-term epistemic change versus short-term epistemic change because we solve for the long term. Anyway, moving on. They say that this argument was definitely new in the blog. They said that animals have like different ontologies. Well, first of all, like this doesn't. And animals have some different ontologies, but we don't assume that. We literally extend the definition of sentience. That was completely conceded. That we said that the capacity to feel, perceive, or experience subjectively that includes animals and humans, or animals, humans, and other types of beings, which is completely inclusive of all types of beings that they're talking about. So their argument there doesn't stand. Next. Bacteria can't feel. You extend the argument that my partner made in the 2AC. Next, this is an epistemic shift in the right direction when they completely concede the point about decreasing ecological securitization, which means that this is an epistemic shift in the right direction where we are able to pass better policies that actually help the environment, which allows us to gain access to the impacts and also set a precedent for better epistemology moving into the future. Next, onto the global warming, or the precedent. Their only offense on this piece of shit is that the Dems pass it, which means that they'll lose political capital. Again, extend the analysis that my partner makes in the 2AC where it's talking about the Dems don't lose political capital. This is a Supreme Court case with a Supreme Court Republican majority, so there's no way that the Dems in Congress lose political capital. So their argument here is like nonsensical, it doesn't stand, and there's like terminal defense on it. Next. You can cross-apply the arguments about how long-term epistemology outweighs to the Brown versus Board of Education argument. Then, extending analysis that my partner makes about how global warming is actually like bad and it's not inevitable. When we talk about how there are like certain technologies in that can be invested in that can actually solve global warming, that goes completely conceded in the block.
They increase investment to the green sector.
They can see that we increase investment to the green sector with an articulation extended by the 2AC, mean that we have access to all of these climate change impacts. Even if you believe that climate change is inevitable, it's still worth it to invest in the short term and have people live a happier life and better life and not cause these resource shortages. They also concede in the short term so that we even if we die in the long term, it's better to live now in the short term. Next. So their turn doesn't stand, so there's no impact on core backlog, meaning that you can only vote affirmative on like we meet the theory show, so this theory show doesn't stand here, but you can also vote affirmative on how we outweigh on time frame of the epistemology arguments and how a long-term shift in epistemology is better than a short-term shift, but you can also win the argument on time frame where we say that it's better to solve for global warming in the present and make sure that short-term change happens before the long-term.
Anyway, guys.